Hi everyone, welcome back to the grandfather clock tutorial, and today is quite an exciting day. I love this ornate top, we're calling it, sort of scroll top clock face and surround. So there it is in the wood effect, and we're going to be doing it in white so that you can see how it fits in with the tutorial clock so far. Now, there are a lot of bits, especially of these pieces. So these form this back part here, and you just about see that there, and make the top flat behind this scroll top there. You could continue this all the way back, or you could have the flat top all the way to the front. So we've included in the SVG, I think, just about enough of these to do this version. If you want some more, cut some more, and alternatively, if you'd like a thicker scroll section, cut some more of those too. So we've given you, I'd say, probably the right amount for this, but do have a practice. Glue some and then think, okay, is this thick enough? Do I need some more? It's completely up to you. That's the point of SVGs. If you always need more parts, just cut more. Otherwise we'd end up with massive files and you'd be cutting things unnecessarily. So I'm going to show you how to recreate this version today, and then all you'll need to do is decide what you want yours to look like and either have more or less of each of those elements. This part T is the top. If you wanted to cover the layers at the top, you could do that. So that's what that's for. This is just the cutout of the frame, so we don't need those parts. And again, exactly like the square version, we've got the back, the two sides, the frame front, and then we've got the clock face support that we glue the clock face onto, and the ledges either side, and one for the bottom or the top, depending on where and how you fit the pendulum. So that's what we're working with today. I'm going to glue up the pairs and press them as they dry, as we always do. You need to be in a nice contemplative mode, I think, to glue all of these pairs together. And if you're doing it in the wood coloured craft board, I would say you have to do this many sort of layers. If you're doing it in white or you're going to paint it, you could get away with using matte board for these pieces. So if you remember, I did some examples of how the knife blade cuts matte board didn't do so well on the smaller cuts, but for that particular piece there, this is with the deep cut blade, and you can see because it goes around corners, it didn't do a great job on this piece. But with the knife blade, you can see that's actually a fairly nice cut. So if you wanted to not do so many layers, you could cut them from matte board, but that would be if you're going to paint the finished clock. If you want to do it in the wood effect, you would need to do it in the craft board. You could cut it in basswood, probably not chipboard, because chipboard wouldn't stain the same way, and again with basswood you would probably end up with more visible lines where the wood is thicker and the stain stains the outside of wood different to the inner part of the wood. Because I like it to be a continuous colour, that's why I've done mine all in craft board, but you could get away with less layers of matte board using the knife blade and housing for this part particularly. But I'm going to do the long way round, and it's just take your time, be steady, and as I said, I always glue in pairs so that we can be sure that we've got them lined up as best we can. If you start gluing too many together at once, they move while they're drying. So that's what I'm going to do. Get yourself a cup of tea or coffee, put some nice music on, and then just kind of meditate while you glue, I think is the best one for this file. So I'm going to glue all my pairs up, press them under my stainless steel bench block, and then we'll come back when we're ready to assemble the clock surround. Okay, so once I've glued up the third layer onto everything that had 3 layers, so that's the back, the sides, I've done 3 layers of the scroll top and the ledges and the front frame, we can now start layering these together. Initially I'm going to do the pairs together, so there's 4 layers in each. And you'll notice I've kept 2 at the top here. That means when I'm building out this thickness here, and again, it depends what material you're using, and the amount of glue that you put in between each layer, you might get to the end and think that you only need 1 more thickness of craftboard layer rather than a pair. So that's why I've kept 2 single ones out. So I'm just now going to put these into pairs, and then I will start assembling them. I won't kind of get my sort of finished opinion on that until I've built everything else, and then I can measure them up. So I'm just going to do into the 4s now, and clamp them while they dry. While we're waiting for those to dry, it's a good time to select our clock face, and this is from the printable PNG file. And again, it's good to use the frame and think which clock face you prefer and what you want to see through the frame. And again, for me, this is the smallest one on here, but you can always scale these up and down. As I said in the previous video, print it out on copy paper first. It came out better for me on sort of photograph paper that you can put in the printer. Got a nicer shine, but I'm just doing it on copy paper for now, and if that's all you've got, that's fine. So I'm going to pick the smallest one, and it will need to fit onto this piece, this clock frame here. So actually I'm going to cut this exactly on that edge. I don't need to leave a margin there. It's pretty good as it is. And again, you could do this with the print and cut facility on the Cricut, but this was just quicker today, and it's not too complicated an image to cut out. And if you don't like the white edge of the paper that you're printing onto, you can always run a Sharpie around it in the colour of your choice, and that will hide the edge, the white edge of the copy paper. So I'm going to glue that onto the clock front support. As you can see, there will be a little edge around it. This is white anyway, so it doesn't matter. In the brown one, you don't even see the edge. It looks like part of the wood. But if you wanted to cut this out of a different colour or paint it before you put the clock face on, if the white edge bothers you. So I'm going to glue that on, and this is a bit thicker. I can't even see the CF through it today like I could for the other one, but if you don't want that, turn it over. And then just centre it on there. You'll kind of, it will, the frame fits it exactly anyway. And then if you need to use a brayer to get it really flat and take out any air bubbles, and then we'll press that to dry. So we can begin to construct it, and again exactly the same as yesterday, we start with the back and we're going to put the sides on so the glue goes on that edge. And make sure that you've got it level at the top and the bottom, and wipe off any excess glue if it's squeezed out, and then that's what you're looking for there. Do the same on the other side. And you also want to make sure that they're at right angles there. Just give that a couple of minutes to set. While I'm waiting for that, I'm going to glue another couple of these so they can be drying. You always want to, if you can, make sure that if in doubt, the top edge is the most level. So it's nice and flat, but we can sand it afterwards anyway. And then you can use those clamps to glue them and hold them. Press them while they dry. And then, as we did yesterday, we can put the ledges in now to support the clock face. Make sure they don't poke out of the top or the bottom. And then we can glue the 2-layer scroll top and the 3-layer together. And then again, use some clamps or put it under a weight while that dries. This ledge will wait until we've finished the gluing of this part. And next you can decide if you want to glaze your frame front. I'm going to do the same as I did with the square one and just cut it by hand. We will put a shape in the SVG cut and we'll colour it blue so that if you do want to cut it on the Cricut you can. Mark this in whichever way you want. The pencil does come out on it very lightly. I don't even know if these are the best scissors for doing this, but it's a bit thick to be trying to cut it with my X-Acto knife, I think, especially around a curve, and I probably should use my Cricut. But if in doubt, cut less, and you can always cut more off. So that fits in. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. Where are we? There, you can just see that. So again, I'm going to put the minimum amount of glue, clean that before I glue it, around the edge of the frame so that it doesn't squeeze out. And I did try a special glue for clear substances. I'm just going to smooth that out with a cocktail stick. That doesn't cause the sort of blooming effect on clear plastics, but it actually didn't work very well. So Aleene's tacky glue for me is more reliable, and super glue kind of makes it go a little foggy if it spills out, whereas this you can at least wipe it up or scrape it off. I'm going to put that under there. And try not to move it. I'll just show you. If when you put this down, you want to put it down sort of very vertically, not move it sideways, or you could actually move the layer that you're trying to glue. If you remember, when we glued this bit, we glued it onto the middle section, and the middle section already had this top 3 layers on top of it, and we glued this onto it. So I've just replicated that today with this piece. So this is, if you remember, the flush back and the gradient front, and this will be sitting on top of it like that. So we can glue this onto there. This would replicate sitting on top of your clock, and the pendulum goes through this bit. So if you haven't done the square top now, this is where you would get your middle section with those layers and glue the top onto it. So we put the glue on the bottom of the 3 edges, and we want to line the back of this piece with the flush back there of the gradient. I don't know if that you can see that. So this is the flush back, and it lines up with the back. So we put this down. This is the glued side. This goes down with the flat back too, like that. And we just want to make sure that the sides meet up. And you can wiggle them a little bit. So this will be the top, these are the sides, and then this is the gradient at the front, and then it's all flush on the back. But it would be the equivalent of I've just stuck it onto that part there. I probably could have made another middle and base again, but there's only so many times I can make the same thing. So we'll just leave that to set up a bit. And you can put the ledge in there to support the clock face. That's the bottom. If you've got the pendulum coming up through there, you won't be able to. And the clock face will sit very neatly just onto, so that you don't need the third one. So if we now get back our top pieces, and you can see they sit on top, and we've filled in just the back there so there isn't a gap. So I think I need to cut that piece actually. Or did I use one of those? Hold on a second, I'll be right back. Okay, I found it. If you remember these bits that came out of the centre of the frame, don't throw them away, because if we go for this top at the back, the top of that handily covers that gap there. So we'll glue that in at the end. So let me see. I think these are 8 layers each at this point. This is 16 layers. And I'll measure it up to there. Oh, I definitely still need some more. So I might have to cut. I lost count when I did these. Probably need that much again. So I'll go and cut some more of these and come back again. Okay, so I quickly went and cut and glued a second set of these. So I've added those into the SVG file now, so there was double what there were. And you can see how I just hold them all together with these. You just want to make sure the pressure is even rather than slightly off, or it might push them out of alignment when you do that. So this set's dry, so we can now put the scroll front on to the first half, and it's pretty obvious. You just want to line up obviously the bottoms and that curve there and these outer curves here. So we'll put the glue on. Make sure if there's any glue coming out that we wipe that off. And then push down on the sides and the bottom until you have lined up these edges here and the curve, and then the top just kind of sits there. And I'll show you a trick in the next video for getting rid of the layers, especially if you're going to paint them. So again, the one thing we now need to be careful is if we use the clamps is to protect that front surface, because the thicker this gets, the more pressure is put on. So if you're happy that that's even, put a spare piece of Kraftboard over the nice side that you want to protect. The back doesn't matter so much, and get the clamp and get it over both parts evenly. We'll wait for that to dry. Once that's set, we can get the second amount. So this is 2 lots of 16. This is 32 layers. I don't know if there's a world record for the amount of layers in a miniature made with a Cricut, but I'm sure I'm getting there. And so we want to now start checking that we're not exceeding the width of this cabinet. So if I glue those, you can see there's still room for at least a couple. I've got a pair, well, I've got 4 there, so let me add those on. That's why it's good to keep the odd sort of single ones and a pair, so that when you get to this stage you can easily add 1 or 2 layers and fine tune the depth according to the amount of glue that you've put in between. And I do tend to use quite a thickness of glue. That might be, I think that's a layer, I'll line that up with the front, that's a layer just too thick than I want there. So I'll take off the 4. I'll add a 2, and that looks good to me. There you go. They're not evenly lined up yet, but that's a good thickness. So I'm going to glue the 2 onto this one here. And then we want to glue all of those pieces together. If you've managed to do it in matte board, you can fine tune with layers of Kraftboard if you need to. And if you want to, you want to make sure really that the top edges the top edge is flatter. This is flatter here. So imagine this was the end of your bench. You could put it on like that. So if that was your desktop, push down that way to create or make sure that the top is as level as it can be. The underneath you won't see anyway because it's in the cabinet, so do push down like that to make the top as flat as possible. But tomorrow I'll show you that we can actually sand that once it's dried up. It's a bit tacky now. So that is that piece. We will measure it up against, I like that, that's a good thickness. I am going to clamp that. I don't know if my clamps will reach actually. So I'll put my piece of protective Kraftboard over the top, and yes they will. So I need to make sure that we clamp the body, not the top of the scroll part there. You see that? Okay, let that set up. And the clock face you could put in now if you wanted to. You can leave it until you've put the top on. That's up to you. There's a little wiggle room in there, so I tend to put the top on first and then locate this. Otherwise, if this was slightly to the left and the top was wanting to nudge it to the right, you'd have to file down the inside of the top. So this is just easier to fit afterwards. So we'll leave that to dry up and set really well. Okay, so this has now dried. It's fairly chunky. And we can glue it onto the top. And you'll notice there's that hole through the back. So that's another good reason to wait to put that on, is that we want to glue that bit in place to fill the gap at the back as well. So let's put this on first. We're going to do the top 3 edges. And again, just line it up on your bench so that it's all flush at the back and the sides, and check that the sides are equal and the front is equal. I possibly could have put another layer on the back, because when I press them they get even smaller. If I'm that bothered, I could just add another one on. So we press that down now, just use finger pressure to keep that in place while it dries. Move these inside bits out a little bit to meet that top edge. You can feel when they're right, it feels nice and flush. And just hold that in place. I wouldn't want to clamp this now, this is just too big. You could use bigger clamps and do it. but it takes quite quickly. And then the next thing we'll want to use is this. Remember, this is the cutout from the inside of the door frame there. That will just fit in there, so I can put that in while I'm waiting on that drying. You don't want to put glue on this half moon because that will be sticking out the top. And you can just slide that up. It's exactly the same curve. And press that down. There's a tiny, tiny little gap actually, but I don't think you're even going to notice that, especially when we've got the face, the clock face in. Keep pressing this down. So that suddenly looks really good. And you might still have this bit attached to the middle section. And then simply we can glue the clock face in. And then if you wanted, if you were just going for the fixed frame, you would glue that on now. Or if you want to do the hinge, I'll be showing you how to do the hinge in the next chapter and how to do some of the finishing touches. And if you remember, there was one last piece, the T for the top, that you could put over those top layers. You can see all the lines there. Just about see them some. Can you see them? You can put that on the top, and that kind of hides a multitude of sins there and finishes the top off, but you will see the gap there at the side, or the sort of the layer at the side. So I didn't like that so much myself, but you could also fill and smooth that over if you wanted to. But in the next video I'll show you how I do the finishing touches and how we do the hinges. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you soon.